Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have some legacy for you. Reanimator versus Cephalid Breakfast, the finals of an F&M. Shuko hits the table first. Force of Will brushes aside this unmask. If I get an untap, that's going to be a Cephalid, and instead Cabal Therapy hits the Cephalid from hand, breaking up a turn to win thanks to double discard spells. Now it's going to be a matter of trying to find follow-up Cephalid, a Ponder. Just not good enough. Still a Shuko in hand. Terrible card to have in hand. Type of thing you want to put back with Brainstorm. There's already Shuko on board, so any Cephalid potentially lethal here. Step through. Also a welcome card, Cabal Therapy. Targeting himself. Oh, but we see just an Exhume. So Exhume actually not going to be amazing here. May have to make that play anyways. Exhume would bring back Gristlebrand, but also the Cephalid. So Rodney would have to win on his turn or get rid of that Cephalid somehow. A Grief pitching Archon. Oh, very interesting. I actually don't love that play. That Archon is a nice, clean answer to the potential Cephalid that might happen. That Archon might have been more valuable in hand. Any one of these turns can be lethal. A top-decked step through. They'll just allow you to tutor up at instant speed. The card is incredibly strong. And another Unmask, this time taking Shuko. Leaving, I believe, just an Exhume in hand at this point. Game's a train wreck for Rodney. Land and the Cephalid off the top. There you go. So the clock ran out there as Cephalid arrives to pick up that Shuko and carry it to victory. For those unfamiliar, which if you've watched the channel a bunch, you've definitely seen this list several times. It is what I play pretty much all the time in Legacy at this point. And I've done a lot of innovating with the list. Very happy with how it's evolved with the printing of new cards like Thassa's Oracle, Step Through, Prismatic Ending, Urza's Saga. I mean, there's been quite a lot of improvements since the days of running Laboratory Maniac or the Mimeoplasm. But the deck will mill itself out using the Shuko or Nomads in Core, along with the Cephalid, and along the way hit Narcomoebas, and use those bodies to flash back a Dread Return, bringing back Thassa's Oracle. It is a very compact combo. It does require playing some garbage cards like Narcomoeba and Dread Return. Those are not cards that you generally ever want to draw in your hand. But you've got Brainstorm to put them back, Ponder to dig around them, of course. Narcos do also pitch to Force of Will, which is nice. But that game, a tough one there for Reanimator. Not even sure if that was really keepable. Didn't have the second land. Pretty underwhelming. Certainly didn't work out at all. We know about what you think about it. I feel like keeping that Archon would have been necessary. Got a Putrid Imp here. A Ball Therapy. It's two Force of Wills, showing Force of Negation, Very Macabre, and Surgical Extraction. So it actually does connect. Third land will mean Force of Negation will come online, but there is that Ball Therapy in the bin. It's a pretty weak hand as far as the keepable range goes. It was just a ton of disruption, which can be fine versus Reanimator. But generally, you want to have some type of clock or some type of anything at all. Card drawing. Oh, Brainstorm's a fantastic draw here. Brainstorm with a fetch land on board. That could actually convert directly into the combo. It's only a 2-card combo, only requires 3 mana, so Brainstorm pretty much the perfect draw. Question of whatever I actually get off of it. One to turn. Force a will in hand. Just a whole bunch to say no thank you. Of course, that Putrid Imp can cash out with a Cabal Therapy down the line. Wouldn't be a totally unreasonable thing to Surgical Extraction the Cabal Therapy to get a look at the hand. Could possibly get a Cabal Therapy that's still in hand. Some of the discard potential later on. We got a broken sleeve here. Just all of the hate. Force of will, force of negation. This hand was mostly kept for science. I could actually make an argument for casting Fairy Macabre, beating down for 10 turns if you think that there's enough resilience, but more often than not, Cephalid Breakfast will outrace its own clock. That's actually why I had to cut Cauldra out of the deck, had Stoneforge package, and I'm telling you, pretty much just always ended up outracing it. Even if you got out of Cauldra, still ended up winning with the combo before Cauldra ever dealt lethal damage. Now, Hardcast Force of Will is going to stop Dothy. That's a dangerous card in this matchup. Dothy is a card that doesn't go through the graveyard, shuts down the easiest kills. With it on board, you'll need to go ahead and get a Thassa's Oracle into hand. And then, of course, any type of Force of Wills, Force of Negations, those can be a little bit of a pain on the opposite side of the board. Therapy. This is being flashed back. Surgical goes away. There are Force of Negations, along with a Fairy Macabre. Still a decent amount of defense here. Animate Dead. That is, of course, going to get a Fairy Macabre. 2 Force of Negations online. Neither of those stop a Dothy. This beatdown plan, only 4 turns to pull the combo together. Quite possible neither piece in hand. And the combo will actually also need to include the Thassa's Oracle. So it's a 3-card combo over the next 3 turns. This is not looking great. 7 cards in hand. There's a Saga. That will be able to tutor up Shuko. But there's not enough turns left to make that happen. Turn sideways one more time. Ball Therapy, that is going to get countered. Exiled. Apparently not a prismatic ending. Fired off immediately. Nomads and Core. Oh, crazy. Step through. Wow. I am vaguely remembering this game now. Yeah, we've got to step through bouncing both of these creatures. So if it wasn't for the Nomads, or if there was a Cephalid or Thassa's Oracle in hand, the game would just be over. Instead, step through is actually being used to bounce the Dothy and the Nomads. And 2 mana gets tapped and untapped. Interesting. Probably signaling abrupt decay. Opting not to. Alright, so both creatures go back to hand. Now the void counters for Dothy remain on all of those exiled cards. Archon of Cruelty and a Dothy go to the bin off of a couple of Entombs. I believe there's still a Force of Negation in it. Bringing back this Cabal Archon would just be lethal. Dark Ritual. And Exhume. Oh. Reanimate. Fairy Macabre's going to hit them both. Dothy comes back down. Ticking up. Be able to get a Shuko here. And no Cephalid in hand, so we're on to the third one. What a grindy game that was, starting with all disruption. Force of Will, Force of Negation, Surgical, and Fairy Macabre. Literally no combo pieces, no cantrips. Just holding on, hoping that Rodney has an all in hand and just gets totally stopped and then be able to rebuild before he does. Again, not super great. I think it's on the edge of the keepable range. Let me know if you would keep a hand like that versus Reanimator, or if you're just going to look for a better 6 or even 5. Don't feel great about keeping it, but I believe I do keep that again in the future. Having 4 different named cards. Maybe use Surgical a little bit different. That is entirely possible. And with perfect information, I think I actually play around Dothy a little bit different as well. Possibly Surgical extracting Dothy at some point if possible. Sideboard pivot. Very interesting. Of course, I've harassed Rodney quite a bit about running Rotting Regisaur. Card is garbage, but he has played it quite a bit. Occasionally beating young children who show up at FNM with a 7/7. It's not the type of card that actually wins in the top 8. Very easily brushed aside by the best decks or completely ignored, whereas Dothy is at least disruption and a bit of a clock, as we saw there. Much happier to be playing against a 7/7, no disruptive element, potential significant downside. Rotting Regisaur, the best things that you can do with Rotting Regisaur, end up on a highlight reel for devastating plays. For example, if your opponent bounces it with Brazen Borrower when you have no cards in hand, put that trigger on the stack, and then you end up discarding to your own trigger. It's an absolute hot mess. But Reanimator does need to address the copious amount of sideboard hate that it runs up against in Legacy. That's totally a thing. There's no debating that. You do need the ability to deal with cards like Leyline of the Void or pivot past them. Some of the best pivots in the format available, I would argue, Show and Tell type of card where you just completely bypass the graveyard. That's a really strong one. I think ability to strip your opponent's creatures out of their hand and bring them back is obviously a tactic, which can be quite strong, but you can't really just rely on that in most matchups. Even a deck like Blue-Red Delver, kind of the best you're going to end up doing, grabbing a 3 for like a Murktide. Not super exciting. Or a Delver, a 3/2. You're up against a Leyline, Dragon Rage Channeler. He's never going to flip, speak. He's going to be just a 1/1. Let me know what your favorite sideboard pivot is for Reanimator. They're answering the hate. Exactly a pivot. Answering with things like Leyline, Abrupt Decay. I'm sorry, Reverent Silence for Leyline, or Abrupt Decay for the smaller permanents. All right, so we're off to game number 3. That was a decent amount of shuffling. Ponder starting things off. Underground Sea. This list notably no longer running Cavern of Souls. I was on 2 copies of Cavern of Souls for quite some time. Very impressed with the ability to make things uncounterable. At the end of the day, I do think Brainstorm and Ponder just are better cards than Cavern, and it kind of pushes it in that direction. Wanting more blue, also the potential to flashback Dread Return, or hardcast a Cabal Therapy. Couple of undergrounds here. TC is just a pretty resilient hand. Force, Ponder, Cephalid, Brainstorm. Overall, that's pretty resilient. May have to take the Cephalid. He grabs the Force. Still Brainstorm in response to any type of attempt to go for it here. Don't sleeve up Reanimator if you're not going to go for it when the shields are down. Got a Dark Ritual. Can be a Brainstorm in response. Eventually finding Graveyard Hate or some counter magic. Let's see what this turns into. Dark Ritual into Dothy. Alright, so it's going to be exactly Force of Will that punish this. And wow, it looks like Cephalids and Step-Throughs are available. So Step-Through will be able to go get Thassa's Oracle. Now it's a matter of assembling the combo. Having that Oracle in hand. Of course, with this Dothy in play, milling out the entire library does give Rodney all sorts of cards. And Cabal Therapy sees 2 Cephalids, so this either the Thassa's Oracle or the Step-Through on top. Ball Therapy could have been absolutely devastating. Knew about the Ponder and a Cephalid, went with a Ponder, thinking that the Cephalids would go on top of the library. Puts him in a weird spot. I mean, he could flash back the Cabal Therapy to hit both Cephalids, declines to do so. Another Cephalid. Not going to be able to race the Dothy. It's actually pretty decent stats. Delver's taught us that 3 is kind of a no-nonsense number. Not the most aggressive, but it will actually close out a game. Also with Dothy on board, the value activation of Cephalid no longer an option. Really in this type of spot, you can go ahead and activate the Cephalid targeting itself, block their creature, prevent the damage, mill, get a little bit of incremental value, possibly a Narcomoeba or Cabal Therapy as you're doing it instead. Not really an option. It's just kind of a dwindling race. Still worth attacking with the Cephalids as it knocks off some life for Bristlebrand and Bristlebrand and Reanimate. Force of Negation stopping Cabal Therapy. Still no Abler. And there's a Shuko. All right. Equipping. Two Cephalids on board, so creature removal not going to be particularly impressive here. Putting some cards into the bin. Red Return is gone. Narcomoeba not going to be triggering as this is going straight into exile thanks to the Dothy. All of these cards are going to have those void counters on them. They'll all be accessible. And now an Abrupt Decay blowing up the Shuko, not the Cephalid. Plenty of cards added to the mix. All of them accessible. That final activation. A whole lot of cards in the graveyard. Could be over at any time. 3 more swings with Dothy. That walks away from access to Force of Will. Or Cephalid can just continue attacking, so. Also can just mill out. Adds on top. A tense game here. Dothy slowing up to keep Force of Will available. Storm. There's a Nomads. So Nomad's going to be able to mill out the entire library. Thassa's Oracle not going to resolve through an opposing Force of Will without backup. Step through, bouncing both. It's a really weird play. Does not come up very often. Twice in the same match. Certainly not against Reanimator. Reanimator is not the type of deck that you typically get to your 5-mana sorcery bounce spell. Here we are. Dothy getting bounced. Ah, Chant. Chant would also be good. Card that shuts off opposing counter magic that Dothy potentially represents. Gotta think we are probably past time here. Abrupt Decay takes care of a Cephalid. Not sure if turns been called. Usually we denote that with a die. A Dothy coming back down. And then Surgical is used. hit the Gabal Therapy. Now, the Thassa's Oracle in hand, absolutely crucial to win. Rodney would just win on the spot if he ripped out the Thassa's Oracle. Almost no way that the creatures in hand would be enough to just beat down for lethal. Nomads. Everything in hand? I'm pretty sure the Thassa's Oracle is in hand. There is 5 mana, but there is a opposing force of will after this turn because the Dothy will be able to attack. Right now it's got Summoning Sickness. So here we go, Nomads. The turn is just such a disaster. There's some known information. I surgicaled, so I wouldn't know exactly what's in hand. So perhaps there's some additional removal that I'm worried about here. There's the Cephalid. There is additional removal. So Abrupt Decay kills the Nomad, so I'm 1 mana shy from winning here. Unable. And there's too many cards left in the library. We're a few extra mills here and there thanks to the Cephalid. Activated ability does come up on occasion. Not going to be lethal right now to cast the Thassa's Oracle. Passing the turn puts that Force of Will back online. What a crazy game. Yeah, we're way into turns now. One of the longest fast effects we've ever done. Of course, double speed. Cutting out the shuffling and the sideboarding time. Likes and subscribes, helping to grow the channel, getting Legacy out in front of as many Magic players as we can. Of course, love to grow the local scene here. Mostly in the teens for F&M. Wednesday and Friday. Fantastic to grow this crowd into the 20s. Like low 20s would be very, very comfortable for our weeklies. We've got plenty of space for that. That would be ideal. So many great options to play in Legacy. If you can play Modern at this point, you can definitely play Legacy. There are plenty of decks. Very accessible in comparison to Modern. Of course, playing a deck that's full of dual lands is a great long-term goal. Not something that comes easily for everyone. Spending thousands of dollars is a small thing. And we've got a Dothy being sacrificed here to grab Archon. And wow, so we found the line. Dothy actually used to go get a land. And then Archon cast, putting me down to 3. I had to sacrifice Cephalid. He's out of there. And now it's casting Thassa's Oracle, seeing Narcomoeba and Force of Will. And casting a Fairy Macabre. That's going to do it. The attack trigger will win the game, set, match, and F&M as Rodney takes it down. A black-green build of Reanimator.